Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you all for being here with us this afternoon for this quick little lunchtime session in collaboration with Nova's Engineering, Information and Engineering Technologies Division and Arfa Syed, who is with Sure Secure Solutions. So today she's going to be presenting a presentation for us entitled Compass Rose, Navigating Towards the Life You Want. If we're going to go ahead and jump in, I'm going to turn the program over to Arfa. And again, thank you all for being here. And thank you, Arfa, for doing this and collaborating with us. So
Thank you so much. Give me 1 second as I pull up my slide.
Okay, let me stop sharing my screen so you can share your screen. I'll share. Okay, so you should be able to share now.
Can you see my PowerPoint?
Yep.
Okay, great. Okay, well, I'm so excited to be here, and I wanted to definitely come back to Nova and speak to students about navigating towards the life that you want. College can be a very confusing time, and you have a lot of decisions to make, figuring out who your lifelong friends are, what career path you want to take. You also want to sort of, make a decision about roles, internships, and then, of course, the biggest question in your mind is what major should you have and select and pursue? And that's kind of the big daunting question when it comes to those college years is what should I major in? This is a lifelong decision. And I think some of the things that I talk through in today's presentation might not give you that answer today, but it'll definitely help you get a little bit closer. And with that being said, I wanted to just talk a little bit about myself and my journey career-wise and things that I've done. So I am actually a Nova grad and I'm very proud to be one. I think Nova was a phenomenal place for me to get my education. And I actually started at Nova pursuing 2 associate's degrees because I was sort of in that place where it's just like, which path do I want to pursue? And so one of the paths that I was thinking of at that time was going to law school, and I was working at a law firm and I wanted to know what that was like. And the other path was business school. So I started sort of on these 2 tracks, and I thought as I went along and got all my core credits out of the way, I could get closer to making that decision. I ended up majoring in business with a concentration in marketing. So that's what I got my 4-year degree in. And in the process, I actually also worked at the University of Maryland, where I feel like this gives me a little bit of credibility with the Nova students. I oversaw admissions for 2 of University of Maryland's transfer programs. And during that time, I got access to a lot of applications, personal statements. I was able to advise students, and I really saw how daunting that time could be. And that's why it's important for me to come back and speak to students as much as possible. Something I said I would never, ever, ever do was work in government contracting, because of course that's what everybody in Northern Virginia does. And lo and behold, I'm actually a full-time cybersecurity consultant for NASA, and I absolutely love it. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. Before today's session, I checked Nova's website, and it says that as of today, the website said there's more than 130 degree and certificate programs to choose from, and you're sure to find what you want at Nova. So you can just see how daunting it could be to select a major when there's 130 options just at one institution. And one last thing I wanted to share before we got into the weeds of the presentation is a quote that I read in Michelle Obama's book. The book is called Becoming, and I thought it was a very great book on this topic just because when you're a kid, people often ask you, what do you want to be when you grow up? And she said it much better than I could say it. She said, now, I think it's one of the most useless questions an adult can ask a child. What do you want to be when you grow up? As if growing up is finite, as if at some point you become something and that's the end. And I hope today, students can really open their mind up to understanding that you can be whatever you want at any point in your life, and it's just a matter of, reinventing yourself, finding new paths, options, opportunities as they come along. So with that being said, there is a certain mindset I would like students to have for today's session. First things first, have an open mind, never say never. I said I would never be a consultant or work in contracting, and I think it was one of the best things that I was able to do in my career, working at the best federal agency in the DC area and some of the greatest minds. That was something that I was closed to before. And so I think having an open mindset, just don't use absolutes when you speak. That's just something that I would encourage. The second thing, trust and have confidence in yourself. It's very important to know that you know what to do and that you will know what to do. And just trusting your decision making, I think, is a huge part of this process as well. Another thing I want you to do as we talk through today's presentation is think about your life wheel and the different items that are on that wheel. I think that's very important as well. And then we'll get into a little bit more detail on the next slide on that. The last thing I would say is write, write, write. So whether it's getting a journal or a notebook, an idea book, sticky notes, but being able to write out your ideas, that's something that's very, very important. And we'll talk a little bit more on that as well. So the wheel of life, this is something that's very important to help guide decisions. And what it does is it basically maps out all of the different areas of one's life. And it's not important just to think about it, but to actually map it and to write down the things that are important to you and even scale them, scale what level of importance they have for you. So these are broken into 8 different buckets that are categorized in 4 different areas. One is mental, one is physical, one is emotional, and one is spiritual. And so when you go through this life wheel, I put a link on the slide as well. If you go to wheeloflife.numi.com/wheel, you can actually assign your priorities and sort of see what your life wheel would look like. And that's something I recommend everyone to do. But just having a map of these different life areas is very important in sort of your decision making process, because you want to think of like, where does growth, career, and learning map out to all of the other things in my life? Is my health more important? Are my relationships more important? Within those relationships, what's important? Friends, family, and then how do you contribute, to your community, things like that. So it's very important to look at things holistically and not just like the single career track. And the reason that I share this specific example is because I recall when I was on these 2 different tracks at Nova, I really wanted to go to law school. And something I encourage is doing internships, following your passions, gaining experience in those passions, and figuring out how much they mean to you. So I was working at this law firm, and basically we had a um, directive come out from the White House that changed the law overnight. And as a result, I had to work a 17-hour shift. And I realized through looking at previous case law that that could actually happen quite a bit. And so I thought to myself, I really like the research, the presentation, putting together files, getting case prep done. I liked all of those things. What I didn't like about what I saw in the firm is the schedule, the toll it took on partners, the toll it took on the businesses when they, chose to open a law firm, and just, having to be in court at a certain time. And I saw that one of the things that was important to me was time with my family, flexibility in my schedule. And those were things that I could not have had I chosen that career path. And again, that's just something to keep in mind of why it's important to give certain weight to certain areas in your life, to understand how important is this really to you? If you got this but not that, would you be happy with that? And that was something that I learned while I was doing an internship. So again, I encourage the internship so you can understand, does this really weigh as important in my mind as I think it does? And again, for me, relationships, friends, family, they come over everything, not my career or job. And I wanted to make sure that I was in a role that I could do from any corner of the world. And that was something that was most important to me. And so I made my career decisions based off of that choice. So again, just wheeloflife.numi.com/wheel. You can take your it's free. You'll just be able to get a map of your wheel from that site. Data-driven decisions. This is something where I would say my time in digital marketing, data analytics, doing cyber work, you learn to make data-driven decisions. So it's not just working off assumptions, but it's actually records and data that are helping you see what the picture is of really going on. So here's something that I recommend all students do, and that would be to record your time or journal your time. You can do this the old fashioned way, simple pen and paper, or you can use an app. I reference one on this slide called toggle.com. But what you can do is analyze your time. And for iPhone users, I know you get summaries of sort of your phone usage. But aside from your phone usage, there's a bunch of different chunks of time during the day where maybe you're not on your phone. So for students, I imagine a chunk of this would be time in class, time spent on classwork, homework, things like that. But what pay specific attention to what is done on this slide, where write down how you would like to spend your time and then log how you are actually spending your time, and look at those patterns very carefully because they tell a story, and they tell a story of the things that are important to you. If you want to take this a step further, I would actually also encourage that you make a financial picture of the same. What do you spend your money on? Because the two most important things for you, the most valuable things, are your time and it's also your money. And knowing how you spend those things tells you a lot about yourself. So again, you want to do two things. You want to do the assumption, this is how I think I spend my time. And then you want to do the data where you actually look at how you spend your time. And if you give me 1 second, let me see if I can pull just something up here real quick. Let me, can you still see my slide?
We see, yes, we still see the time slide.
Okay, great. Let me just make this bigger. I'm not able to pull that link up just yet, but yeah, one more point that I want to address on this is that I've done this exercise multiple times with my background in digital marketing and social media, and people are usually completely shocked at how much time they spend on social platforms. So they don't just, they think like, oh yeah, I just check Instagram, maybe 3 times in the day or something like that. But when they are checking Instagram, they check it for an hour at a time, 2 hours at a time. And you can get lost in the, just social media world. You could get lost in a book, you could get lost exercising. And so it's very important to understand the assumptions and what's actually going on. So again, when it comes to decision making, don't just assume. Actually look at the data, look at what's going on, and let that drive you. So that's what I'll say about using your time more wisely. A reflection point. So here, what I wanted to do is I wanted to share a quote from someone that inspires me. So I'm a huge fan of podcasts. One of my favorite podcasts is the JRE Experience, which is run by Joe Rogan. And he has a quote where he says, "I've been a bad worker in the past. I know the feeling of failure, the feeling of shame, a weak, lazy person. I didn't respect myself. I say, be the hero in your own movie. Pretend your life was a movie and it started now. What would the hero do? What would the person do that you respect? What would the person do that you admire and inspires you do that?" And I think that's a really great quote to have a reflection point before you make some of these big life decisions, is to what is think about a time that you failed. Think about it deeply, what happened, why you felt the way you felt in that moment. Was it because you were doing something you really didn't like? Was it doing something that you couldn't see yourself doing for a long time? And think about the reasons that led you to that failure. Because that's a really important thing to note about yourself, because again, that'll help guide and drive your decisions. Another thing I always encourage students to do is think about who you admire, but not just who it is, but what is it about them that you admire? Because a lot of times the people that we look up to, the people that we're influenced by, we do that because sometimes we wish we could be that way, or we like that for a reason. We respect what they do for a reason. And so you want to think about what are the things that are inspiring to you. Um, One of the things that inspires me most about his podcast is that it's very long form. It's about 3 hours, even more than 3 hours at a time, sometimes when his guests come on. And in a world of social media, digital marketing, social media, which is stuff that I've studied and industries that I've worked in, he was able to put together a podcast that showed people actually don't like having these goldfish memories. They like having real deep conversations. They like having um, connected conversations where they feel like they're having meaningful interactions with others. And that inspires me. And, I have time to think about that and how much relationships mean to me and things like that. And so I think it's very important to take the time to realize what are the things that you aspire to do, what are the things that inspire you, and things like that. Um, Another question I wanted to address, this is someone else that I look up to a lot. I don't know if anyone on the call knows this person, but his name is David Goggins. And you can see that he was a Navy SEAL, but you can see his pre-SEAL photo and his post-SEAL photo. Um, and this is something that I don't feel like is talked about on college campuses enough, because most of the questions are posed in a way where you should know the answer, right? What do you want your major to be? You should know the answer, right? And if you don't, well, here's a general studies route and figure it out, right? But there is not a lot of people that ask you, well, what don't you want to do? What don't you like doing? And a lot of times, those are the questions that can guide you on a path where you get closer and closer to what you want to do, even though you don't know what it is at that time. So, knowing what you don't want to do, you don't want to be, these are actually really important things. So, if you don't know that right now, that's totally okay. Just go ahead, make the list of the things that you were, did, don't like, and use those to guide you. That can be very, very helpful. And again, you won't always have the answer, but the closer you can get, the more experiences you can get that reveal this to you, that can really, really be helpful in decision making as well. And the last thing that I wanted to touch on before we sort of broke out into an activity is social and business networks. So again, alluding back to my comment on connections, um, and just holistically looking at how you spend your time, who you spend it with, this is something that I think is really important. And I'll speak to how it influences my career as well. So, who are your friends? These are some things that you want to think about too when you're making decisions, because these are people that you let into your orbit, right? It's not, family is a situation that you're born into, your friends you hand select with your decision making skills. So you want to look at, what do they do with their time? What are their passions? How often do you meet new people? How do you connect with others? I would go a layer deeper and say, are your online connections superficial? Do you just go online, add people on social media, or are you adding meaningful connections, people you actually connect with, talk to regularly, are a part of your life? And looking at, are you really connected? How connected are you to the people in your orbit? And I think that's very important from a career perspective. I'll tell you guys. So, again, I never intended to work in the government contracting space. Um, but a lot of my friends are entrepreneurs. I spent most of my 20s working at different nonprofits where everybody was very business savvy, always starting their own business. And the way this opportunity specifically came about is one of my friends that I worked with at this nonprofit had her own contracting firm. NASA became one of their clients, and I was one of the first people she called to fill in one of these roles. And I share that story because, again, it goes back to these social and business connections. Is people tend to surround themselves with like-minded people. And those like-minded people, if they're a good influence, they can actually really help you in terms of, figuring stuff out, exposing you to stuff, adding you to shared experiences. So let's say internship programs, like let's say they got a job at a company, they can maybe tap you for another opening and things like that. And so it's very important to give a lot of weight when it comes to your social and business network. I don't think people realize how much of an influence their friends are. I can't tell you the number of times that I've helped friends fix up their resumes, or cousins or family members. The times that I've talked to them about different, milestones in my career, how I got there, how many times I've tapped my own friends for case studies, for interview preps, and things like that. The people in your life can actually really, really catapult you to a much higher level faster because they are so close to you. And that's not something that should be overlooked. And with that, I'm just going to end on a lighter note. So I chose to add this sort of internet meme. It says, "Don't worry, kids, being an adult is mostly just Googling how to do stuff," um, which is pretty accurate. You'll spend a lot of time just trying to figure stuff out, but you will figure it out. And a path to figure it out is something I call this 9 lives exercise. You'll see there's a picture of a cat on here. And this exercise is basically to get you thinking and realizing what it is that you really like to do, enjoy doing, and using that to drive your decision making. So think of yourself as a cat with 9 lives. And the consultant in me is going to encourage you to do this in Excel, but you could do it the old fashioned way as well. So I would say open up an Excel file and create columns that you label 1 through 9. So you can either put passion 1 through 9. If you're making career choices, put a job 1 through 9. If you want to like work in a company, things like that. You could do it if you're picking a major. So let's say you're confused about your major, you've got a couple of choices. If you got it narrowed down to less than 9, definitely just you can map those out. You can throw in some wild cards there if you want to as well. But passion 1 through 9, I think, is a good starting point. So just write a main sort of passion in each one, or a job in each one. And then under that, use the rows underneath to write down 3 reasons you really like it. So think about what it is about that passion, that career choice, that business or entrepreneur sort of idea that you want to start. Write down 3 things why you think you really like it. What is it about that that makes it attractive to you? Then go down another 3 rows and fill in some information. So let's say that um, you pick a major like a pre-law major, right? Or you write down law school, or you write lawyer or something like that, right? You could pick 3 roles underneath that. So a judgeship, or a prosecutor, or a criminal lawyer, and write down 3 things about those roles you like. So specifically, what is it about that? Is it researching case law? Is it presenting to a judge? Is it litigation? What are the things that you find attractive? Making an argument, winning a case, things like that, right? And what you're going to notice when you do this across all 9, you're going to notice that you will actually start seeing themes from 1 through 9. You're going to start seeing some recurring themes. And again, this will be another moment where things will start sort of revealing themselves to you about yourself. So then take the time to, read through that and figure out, like, what did you find out about yourself? What do you really like to do? What were you sort of turned off by when you mapped it out? If you're doing this for jobs, I encourage that you actually copy, paste job descriptions, and even triage what you really like and what you don't like about those roles, because everybody's worked in positions where they really like this, but they didn't like that. And it just comes with the gig, right? So that's something that you want to map out as well. Um, I don't always encourage that people get so focused on just having a job. I'm all about the entrepreneurial mindset. So for the entrepreneurs out there, can you create a role that doesn't exist? Can you create a business model that doesn't exist, a company that doesn't exist, a need that's not being met? Write down the things that you would do to make that happen. I think that's very helpful as well. And I think that specifically is something that people should do every year, because every year you run into some sort of problem or need that's not being addressed by a market yet. And that's a really great way to get to know yourself too, or get to know your likes, dislikes. Is this something that I can pull off? Should I save up enough money right now? Should I, um, to start using my free time differently to start and fund this business, things like that. So even, think like an entrepreneur as you go through this process, even though you might be pursuing jobs or applications, things like that. It's probably a good idea to maybe think that way as well. And with that, that's all I had for today. So I thank Nova very much for having me and giving me a chance to talk to the students. And if we need to open up for questions, I'm happy to do so, or leave it at that. Let me know, Brittany.
Yeah, so we have one question in the chat. It said, "What was it like getting uh-oh, wait. What was it like getting started in government contracting?"
It was very scary, I would say. And that's just because, not because like uh, I was worried about not being able to do the job. Government contracting is often joked about being like a big alphabet soup. So everything is an acronym. So you walk into any room and everybody's just like talking in acronyms, and you're just like, I don't know what that stands for. I don't know what that stands for. NASA was NASA is an agency that has a couple of different centers, and so all of the centers are referred to as their acronyms as well. So no one will say NASA headquarters, they'll just say HQ. Nobody will say Johnson Space Center, they'll just say JSC. And so something that I had to do is actually map out all the acronyms that I would hear, sort of, get clarification from any of the people that I worked with within my company or within my teams about like, what does that stand for? What does this stand for? And so um, that I would say was probably the scariest part about the job. I will say too that even if you don't know anything, if you have the right mindset, I think people will give you time to pick stuff up. And the reason I say that is when I was interviewed for my position, I had to interview with NASA as well. I did not have full-time consulting experience. I had part-time experience, and I also had no government contracting experience. So I remember going into the NASA interview a little bit nervous. Um, it was a more technical role than I was used to. It was a pivot in my career because I was moving from sort of used to report to the SVP of marketing, and now I was moving under the CIO at NASA. So it was a pivot in that sense too. And that certainly made me a little bit nervous. But I remember the person who interviewed me from NASA, who had put the posting out, she said to me, she said, "You don't have any contracting experience. Why should we give you this role?" And I said to her, I said, in my last um, job too, I didn't have any experience in that industry. But within 3 years, I was training people in the industry on, the ins and outs of it. And when I say training, like I would literally like fly out and have trainings for people. And so even though I didn't have that experience, she smiled and she said, "I like your attitude. You got it." And so it was more of like, does she have the mindset to be able to come in here and do these things? And that was yes, right? And so she was willing to give me the leeway that I needed to learn, just because I came in with the right mindset. And that's again why I said at the beginning of my presentation that having the right mindset is really important. So I have no doubt that Nova students are not able to pick up anything. And I've shared this with you, Brittany. I truly believe Nova was the place that set me up for success because they were a university that was willing, they were an institution that were willing to give me a shot when I needed it at the time that I needed it, right? And I learned from doing that that that's all it takes is someone willing to give you a chance. So
Yeah, I really appreciate you sharing your experience and what you said about not having any experience in the particular field that you were trying to enter into. I
mhm,
think that's a common thing for a lot of people. A lot of people are switching careers and still trying to figure out what they want to do. And I know we're on time, so if you need to click off, go ahead. But I have a question that's just been in
sure.
my mind. When you are trying to go after what you want in life, go after your dreams, switch careers, it is scary. Um,
Yeah,
and I think in our heads, we have negative self talk and imposter syndrome, thinking that we are good enough or we can't do this. So,
yeah,
how did you get past like negative self talk and building up your confidence so you're
yeah.
able to go into these interviews and say definitively, like, I know I can do this
Yeah.
in those jobs?
That's a great question. I've had my fair share of imposter syndrome days. I will tell you that, especially having drastically changed my career, going from marketing into cybersecurity, it was very scary. But here's what I'll say to that. So I made the pivot. Somebody saw something in me where they decided that they were willing to take a chance on me. right? Having people like that in your life is very important, which is again why I said your social friends network, family support is a huge part of this process. Is like making sure you're with like-minded people where if you're having an imposter syndrome day, somebody's there to say, "Hey, you got this." Right? I have that with my company where they're just like, "We believe in you." I have that with my team where they, say that. But I think again, it goes back to having the mindset, the correct mindset. The way that I deal with it on the days that I do have it is I just look around. Cybersecurity is not something that's been around for forever. Everybody started from somewhere. So that's just something that I keep in mind. And I actually make it an active point to get that out of the mind of students because our company exclusively have recruited from Northern Virginia Community College. And the reason we could do that is because it doesn't matter who you are or where you come from. If you want to learn cybersecurity, if you want to learn consulting, you can do it. And that's something that we reiterate and emphasize in our internship program as well, is that it really doesn't matter. On my imposter syndrome days, like I said, there's so many people that work at NASA that got their undergraduate degree in something completely unrelated to IT, cybersecurity, cloud security, whatever you name it. And so that's all you need to sort of hold on to when you're having that down moment.
That was great, a great answer. Yeah, mindset plays a big part, and I think constantly reminding ourselves that like it's not a it is up and down. Like every
Yeah.
day we're not going to feel like, oh, I got this, and we just have to keep reminding ourselves. Um, but thank you so much, Arfa. This was amazing. I really enjoyed hearing your story. I know we've talked and you've kind of shared a little bit, but it was great to hear the full big picture of it all.